But as the world watched in awe, a small rural town on the west coast of Newfoundland had no time to sit back and take it all in.
Places like Stephenville on the west coast of the island. Here, people slept in classrooms, but there were no complaints.
Ironically, that morning, we were chatting with an instructor that we had just hired for the digital animation program. He was located in Toronto, and during the conversation suggested that I might want to look at the TV. And of course, that was when the first aircraft, or shortly after the first aircraft had crashed into the World Trade Center. And then shortly after, there was the second aircraft and reports out of the Pentagon. So a group of us gathered downstairs in the lobby, which was the only functioning TV at the day. So the gathering in the lobby gradually increased. I'd say we had almost all of our staff in the lobby at that point, watching the coverage as the day unfolded. At 12:15, we received a call from the airport, and the call was simply put, can you feed and accommodate 2,500 people?
Across this country, their planes were diverted here after the attacks. A quarter of those passengers are in Newfoundland. The province is a little overwhelmed, but as Linda Calvert reports, its people are more than happy to help.
So we said we would give it our best shot, and then I guess the best way of characterizing it, a process of hurry up and wait set in. The hurry up part took about an hour and a half. We canceled classes. We did a session with faculty and staff in the college with the objective of bringing them up to speed on what we knew, and then identifying teams that we thought would be necessary to get us through this. Because at this point, recall, now we had no idea who the passengers were, what countries were being represented, etc., etc. We just had reports that 2,500 people might show up. That turned into 1,130, within a couple of hours, because the ceiling dropped in Stephenville, and so that was the number we were left with.
In Newfoundland, up to 15,000 unexpected passengers. Many passengers coming off the flights here in Toronto had very few details of what had happened. They were confused and frustrated by the change in their travel plans. Their shock would come later.
The principal accommodations for those who did not stay in hotels was up at our LA Bone campus, where we had military cots set up in classrooms and in the main auditorium. So that was a buzz of activity in terms of just housing people from that level. The building we're in, the DSB Fellow building, was principally the area where people came to eat, gather to be entertained, or to travel out around the communities. Another interesting aspect of the whole few days was the relationship the passengers struck with both locals and among the other passengers themselves. Because remember, there were 8 aircraft, 1,130 individuals, and I can't give you a full listing of the nationalities, but we had, a number of nations and the number of languages and a number of different cultures. So that was really interesting to watch.
It has been a chaotic day at Canadian airports. All flights out were canceled, and hundreds of flights headed for the U.S. landed here instead. As the CBC's Susan Ormiston reports, airports and passengers are finding it hard to cope.
While the world was settling this issue out, air traffic was still ground to a halt. So people were stranded here. People, of course, were anxious. They had family members that were quite keen to know how they were doing. And people naturally wanted to get back home. But that really didn't start until Friday. On Friday morning, we had an ecumenical service, which was, it was really powerful, I think, for everybody who was there. And we didn't know it at the time, of course, but later that afternoon, people would start going home. So it was a particularly fitting end at that point. We had a bulletin board downstairs where people just sort of spontaneously left notes. And it was curious how many referred to the fact that everyone smiled at them. You know, that it was natural, it was unforced, it was welcoming, and they felt comforted by the smiling piece. One British passenger left a note saying that Black Horse is a dodgy beer, right? You know, so there were these little quirky things there as well. But certainly throughout the day, as each flight announced that they were now ready to take passengers, you could just sense the mood lifting on their part. And I think it was about 7:45 that evening when I left the airport thinking, okay, this day is done.